So in this video, I'm going to talk about the German philosopher Gottfried Leibniz. Leibniz was a German philosopher from, I think, the 17th century, and died somewhere around the 18th century. I don't remember exactly what year. But yeah, he was I think he was primarily a mathematician, not really a philosopher, but he is very famous for being a polymath, and often known as being like one of the last universal geniuses, since he knew so much. He was a really bright man. No one can deny that. So yeah, I want to talk about his philosophy. Basically, Leibniz was famous for having this notion that the world that we experience every day is the best of all possible worlds. And for that reason alone, he is not very liked in philosophy, which I guess I understand, because that is something very it's very out there to say something like that, you know. So for that reason, I think yeah, he's ridiculed often, and there isn't really many Leibnizians, I guess, because of that, you know, since more and more people have lost their faith in God and stuff, which I understand why, because you know, there's been so many horrible things happening to us as a species and stuff, you know, a lot of wars and famines and stuff, diseases that have plagued us and stuff. So I understand why not many people are very sort of in agreement. Not a lot of people are in agreement with Leibniz. I understand that, I guess. But I do think that he is kind of underrated, to be honest, because basically the whole his whole reasoning behind saying that is because, well, we can basically imagine the world being a hell of a lot worse than it is now, and I can't help but agree with that. You know, the world could have been way fucking worse than it is. So I mean, that tells you something. You know, that tells you that maybe perhaps the world did not arise from chaos, because you know that does seem to be the general consensus of the modern world, you know, and of the sciences, you know, in the scientific community, that the world is basically just a sort of accident that originated from a fundamentally chaotic universe, which I suppose, I mean, it does sound very realistic, yeah, but it doesn't really sound that logical if you think about it, you know, because basically the whole idea that Leibniz had is that, well, the world is the best possible world because we can imagine things to be otherwise, you know, we can imagine the world to be way worse than it is, right? So like, for example, we can imagine that, for example, we could have been born, and then, for example, I'm just saying this as an example, we could have been like born and put into ovens and like being burned alive like forever and ever, and like eternal torture, basically. Just be born and then put into torture and then never escape from that. But for some odd reason, that reality did not basically become real. So how do you explain that? You know, how do you explain that? How do you explain that the world that we perceive every day is the way that it is and not otherwise? You know, because we can easily imagine other possible worlds that could have been real, that could have been actual. but for some reason are not actual. This is the one that is actual, and for some reason it does seem to have some sort of order. So yeah, I mean, his doctrine, his philosophical system is very complex. I can't really compress all of his ideas into one video, but essentially he thought that, well, he had this idea that there's a sufficient reason to why things are the way they are and not otherwise. So basically, why, for example, I can use myself as an example. Why the fuck am I autistic? I don't know. I mean, I can't possibly know that, but the only one that can know that is according to Leibniz, is some sort of, super intelligent being. Like, there's a reason for why that intelligent being contributed to my to my autism. I don't know why. I can't know that because I'm not God. I'm not all knowing. So, but basically, my disorder basically. If we want to look at it as if it was like a sort of domino effect, basically the brain, in whatever shape that it is shaped right now, that shape was determined. The brain was determined to be shaped like this. Like, if we go back in time, like all the way from that singular point, which was God. So God already had the idea of me having autism way before I was even conceived. So it was always determined. It's always been my destiny to be autistic. So Leibniz basically had this sort of fatalism in his system, but it's not a sort of blind fatalism like you would have seen in a philosopher like, for example, Spinoza, who thought that, well, everything is determined to be as it is, not because of some inherently intelligent cause, but inherently because of something really that is actually blind, not really thinking. So yeah, Leibniz thought that the world could have been easily been way worse than it is, but for some reason it's not. So yeah, was Leibniz coping? I don't know. I mean, I personally don't think so, because I mean he does have a point. Like, I've never been a person of faith. I like, my parents they're Catholic, but I never really bought into religion, because I always felt like it was kind of very dogmatic and stuff, and kind of volatile and stuff. But I do agree that religion is needed in the world, definitely. I mean, a world without religion, it just doesn't function. People need to cope with religion. Now, whether religion is actual cope or not, we can debate that to eternity, because we can't really know whether stuff like God or immortality and stuff really is real, because that sort of stuff is basically beyond our senses. So yeah, that's why I'm primarily agnostic about the world, about God and the soul and stuff like that. But yeah, Leibniz does have a point. I mean, the world could have been manifested in way worse ways than it could have possibly. It could have been manifested in so many possible horrible ways, but for some reason, there seems to be a sort of order in the world that basically the world only seems chaotic, but in actuality, it doesn't actually have an order. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree that Leibniz philosophy sort of sounds like hope at first, but he did put a lot of serious thought into it. I mean, you can't deny that. So yeah, is this the best of all possible worlds? Well, I can say for sure that if I were to be the designer of the world, I would not be. I would not do a good job of doing that. You know. So like I can imagine that, you know. That it does take a superior mind to, I guess, create the world as it is, you know. And when I look at, for example, my hand and stuff, and like it's very hard for me to say that this thing was not designed. Like I agree that it's also very dangerous to anthropomorphize the universe and say that there was an intelligence behind it, because, you know, that's basically us projecting our own our particular mode of being, I guess, onto the universe. I know that that's also very dangerous to do, because it would start to, like, you know, imagine like fancy stuff, you know, and fantasizing about stuff that very well could not be real, and stuff. But I still find it very hard to, like, for example, just do something like, as simple as looking at my hand and say that this was not designed. I mean, I just find that stupid, you know. That's why I don't agree with the general consensus of the modern world that we sort of that the world's basically that we basically just originated from pure chaos, and that there was no mind behind anything and stuff. I don't know about that. I find it hard to believe, me personally, you know. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I believe in God. I mean, the truth is that I just don't know. I don't know, you know, because I do see that both atheists and theists have sound points, both of them, you know. Atheists just think that, well, no, the world is just a dumb thing that is originating from some blind will. Like, for example, Schopenhauer, he thought that the world is just the world that we perceive every day is just a sort of epiphenomenon that we just experience because our minds basically formed some sort of juxtaposition. Like, it always compares, like, unsymmetrical stuff with symmetrical stuff, and then from that sort of synthesis between comparing symmetrical with asymmetrical stuff, we say that, oh, stuff was designed, but in actuality it's just the mind playing on itself. So yeah, that's basically the argument of the atheist. It's just that we like to anthropomorphize the universe. And then I also understand the theist's points that basically that no, that's bullshit. Basically that design exists everywhere, and that we have basically the understanding of our world is basically a direct sort of proof of that we can understand that things could have been way different than they are right now. We understand that the world could have been way worse, for example. So I mean, yeah, I mean, both sides have very good arguments for their philosophies, and I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I can't help but be inherently what's the word I was searching for? Inherently agnostic about stuff, about the world, but I don't know. I mean, lately I can't help but lately I just haven't been able to help myself but feel that atheism is wrong. I'm sorry, but I just can't help but feel that like that, because, you know, yeah, I mean, the fact that the world could have been so much worse, but for some unexplainable reason it's not. You know, that tells you that, and it takes intelligence to actualize a world. You know, to actualize any of the infinitely possible worlds, and the one that we experience every day is the actual one. Like, I can't help but feel like, you know, it does take an intelligence, a super intelligence even, choose that sort of world, you know. Um, so yeah, I agree with Leibniz. I don't know. I mean, I guess yeah, I do agree with him. As crazy as it sounds, because I know it's kind of it does kind of sound like cope, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, especially when you're an incel, like your life is so shit, you know. You're. I know that a lot of people in the black pill incel community are inclined to believe in more pessimistic stuff, like for example Schopenhauer's philosophy and stuff. And I understand why. Don't get me wrong. I completely understand why, and you have all the right to be pessimistic about the world. You have all the right to do that. You know, if you feel like the world is complete shit and just a product of a fundamentally chaotic universe. I mean, that's your right. You know, you have all the right to believe that. But at the end of the day, you know, that's all we can do. All we can do is just believe in what we believe in. You know. So yeah. But yeah, I guess I like the philosophy of Leibniz. It's very comfy. His philosophy. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, yeah. I mean, his optimism. Um, I guess it's kind of over the top sometimes. You know. I do agree. I mean, sometimes life does feel like, you know, it's sometimes this reality does feel like it's, you know, the worst of all possible worlds, which is what Schopenhauer thought. You know, he hated Leibniz, but maybe not hated, but he definitely yeah, criticized him a lot. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Leibniz could have been wrong. It's very possible that Leibniz was wrong, but me personally, I can't help but feel that no, Leibniz was right. Uh, as blue pill as that may sound, I mean, it's not really blue pill. I mean, he does have a lot of reasoning behind his philosophy. So yeah, the best of all possible worlds. Probably, I would say probably, yeah. Although for many people it's hard to believe, which is understandable, I guess, given their bad circumstances.